Good morning, everyone. Today is the 25th of Adar, April 4th. Very special day. First of all, a special welcome to Rabbi Kornfeld from Seattle, who's here in town for his granddaughter's chasana. And we'll be seeing him and the mishpacha over Shabbos. Welcome. Mazel tov. Okay. In today's Tanya lesson, Chaver, we're on page 91. Where did Charlie go? We're recording. Thank you. Okay. Soulful devotion is superior to deed. What? Didn't we say that the action is the most important thing? Now, the Alter Rebbe says that soulful devotion is superior to deed. In terms of dveikus, what does dveikus mean? Bonding with Hashem. And then he says superior to deed, not inherently, which means ultimately deed is most important, but in theory, it should be. But in reality, they're both equally as important to Hashem's will and desire. Hashem wants you to do the mitzvah, and he wants you to have kavanah. Both are important. So two categories of matter. Now we go back to what we were saying previously, a couple of days ago. We were talking about from the bottom. Let's go bottom up. Mineral, vegetable, animal, and the human. So let's split the four into two categories. The first two are mineral and plant, which correspond to two expressions of mitzvahs, deeds, and speech, while two categories of soul, animal and human, correspond to the two levels of devotion in mitzvahs. And we'll explain more of that tomorrow, Friday morning. Okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes of today. Hamachshava. It's not that attachment of man's thought and intellect. It's not that kavanah is superior to attachment to the Eibishter through the actual practical fulfillment of the mitzvah action. We're going to explain that as we go along. So just follow along. It's not that the attachment of the kavanah is superior to the mitzvah, let's say the action of the mitzvah. We already said that the action is the most important thing. You cannot do a mitzvah with thought and kavanah only, but you can do a mitzvah with action only. It doesn't mean it's the right way to do it, but you certainly can say that kavanah is higher, although we're kind of alluding to that. So let's try to flesh this out and see what we're talking about. It's going to be explained a little bit further, and it's going to expound upon the idea that unity with Hashem is achieved by performing the mitzvahs, which is described in the same terms as the unity between husband and wife. So what do we say? Kiddushin. In the bracha preceding the fulfillment of a mitzvah, we say Hashem, who sanctified us, kiddishanu, made us holy with his mitzvahs. I like to say with his connections. You know, mitzvahs are a connection to Hashem. So he made us holy by encouraging us to connect through him through this performance of this action. So obviously the quality of man's attachment to Hashem through kavanah cannot surpass that of the performance of mitzvahs, right? We have to do it. You can't just have the deepest meditation and think about it, but you don't do it, obviously. So where then lies the superiority of kavanah? Why is kavanah greater than the actual mitzvah? As described earlier, just like we talk about a person has a soul, so you have the body and the soul. So you have a mitzvah, which is the performance of the mitzvah, and then you have the soul, which is the kavanah. It would seem that the soul is spiritually higher. Hello? So actually, it's not just that it's higher, but the kavanah spiritual is more superior because this too is Hashem's will. And it's probably out of the two, more difficult, even though you might say, it's easier. I'm just going to stop and think and meditate on God. That's going to be easier than actual performance of the mitzvah. But when you really break it down, kavanah is much harder. Let me give you an example. Try to daven Shemona Esrei. Try to say Shema. You know, you put on the tefillin, you do the deed, but to have real proper kavanah, maybe once a week, once a month. It's very hard because you have to put your soul absolute, total focus and devotion to Hashem while you say these words. and your time. You have to really put your heart and soul into it. And all your might. That's probably why it says b'chol me'edecha, because b'chol nafshecha, okay, b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, but with all your might means you really got to pull out all the stops there. So what's the point here? What's the will of Hashem? L'davka b'seichel ma'ashava v'kavonas hamitzvos ma'asiyos v'kavonas kriyishma tefillah shabrachos. Hashem wants us to attach to Him with having real, proper kavanah during the action mitzvahs and during saying Shema and during all the brachas. Whenever we say a bracha, you don't just, we have to eat something quickly. I'm benching as I'm running out the door. The illumination of Hashem's will here, that radiates and is enclosed in this kavanah, is far greater than we can possibly imagine. So could you imagine the kavanah? If we have proper kavanah, it's far superior to the actual mitzvah. Not that you could do a mitzvah with kavanah alone, but could you imagine if you could do a mitzvah with proper kavanah? That's certainly the highest level of the performance of the mitzvah. Obviously, we know that the soul is far superior as in regards to spirituality and connection to Hashem and everything else over the body. As far as the light is concerned, Ored HaNeshama, Shehu Kli Umelubash Umelvush HaNeshama, K'moy Guf HaMitzvah Atzma Shehu Kli Umelubash L'Kavanasa, just as the body of the actual mitzvah is a vessel and a garment for the kavanah. For this reason, then, the performance of the mitzvah is likened to a body, and its kavanah to a soul. So obviously, you really need both. You can't have a soul without a body. Although you could argue that the neshama was around previously, and when the person, after 120 years, the neshama goes up to the next level and continues to live just in a different form of life. Okay, so that shows that the neshama is taka superior. But if you want to talk about it in a body, then you need both. You need the body to hold the soul, and you need the soul to give life to the body and to make it a Yiddish person. True, although both the actual mitzvah and the kavanah contain the same supernal will, in reality, Hashem wants you to do both, which is perfectly simple, meaning changeless and indivisible, God forbid. So we can't say Hashem would rather this more than this. We need both. So there cannot be said that kavanah contains more of God's will and performance. I'm sorry. We can't say that kavanah contains more of Hashem's will and doing the actual mitzvah is less. Can't say that. And this will is united with Hashem's essence and being in perfect unity. Nevertheless, the illumination of Hashem's supernal will in one soul is different in terms of its contraction and expansion. Certainly, when it comes to the neshama, there's more godly light, and we could understand that on a basic level. So in the performance of a mitzvah, this illumination in a state of contraction, when it comes to one's attachment to Hashem's will, is not readily apparent. When it comes to a person, we know that the soul is on a higher level. When it comes to a mitzvah, we can't really tell, because Hashem wants them both. So here, clearly, one's thoughts and intellect are attached to Hashem, but at the same time, we know that the mitzvah is the physical action and the deed is obviously of utmost importance. In the note which follows, the Alter Rebbe traces the difference between mitzvahs and their kavanah to their source in the supernal spheres. In this here, it's obviously from the Zohar. These are, again, some of these things are a little bit, esoteric, but let's just try to follow here. It's explained in Eitz Chaim that kavanah in mitzvahs, when we do a mitzvah, and in Torah study, is on the level of light, while the body, so to speak, meaning the performance of the mitzvah, is the level and category of the kelim or the garments. Shehem bechinas tzimtzum, she'ayidei tzimtzum ha'or nisavu hakelim, yodua la'ayidei achein. These vessels represent contractions, for it is through the contractions of the light that the vessels came into being, as is known as Kabbalah. Similarly, the difference between mitzvahs and their kavanah is one of contraction and expansion, respectively, as explained above. Obviously, there's a slight difference, but from our perspective, we can't really necessarily see the difference, and both are vital and important. So the Alter Rebbe now explains. You guys following? You guys with me on Zoom? You guys here still? The Alter Rebbe now explains. We're almost done, guys. The Alter Rebbe now explains the analogy of body and soul to mitzvah and kavanah. He states that just as in the analogy, all existence is classified into 4 categories, with 2 of them, mineral, vegetable, belonging in turn to the broader category of body beings, and the 2, which we could say the mitzvah, the heart of the mitzvah, and the 2, the animal and man, to the broader category of soul beings. You know, you could say your doggy, you have a rabbit still? All right. No, gone? So Paul has a doggy, and he says, that's my baby. Hey, does your dog have a soul? Of course, right? But you wouldn't say your plant has a soul. So the plant and the mineral, one category, that's like the body, and the animals and the human beings, that's like the soul in this setup, in this category. So too with mitzvahs and kavanah. Gam kein la'arba madregas. They too, the mitzvahs and kavanah, are differentiated into 4 levels. Again, we have the mineral, the vegetative, the animal, and the human. Ki guf ha-mitzvah atzma mamish hein beis madregas shehein mitzvahs ma'asos mamish. We have the body of the mitzvahs themselves, comprising of 2 levels, which consist of real action as opposed to speech, which is merely regarded as action. Obviously, speech is also, as we said, you use the different parts of the mouth. So that's somewhat of an action. But when you put on tefillin, it's clearly, you could say that that's more of a physical action, right? The mitzvah tluya b'divrei machshava k'may Talmud Torah kriyishma. Obviously, when we have mitzvahs that are performed with speech and thought, such as learning Torah or kriyishma, when we say shema, tefillah, berachas hamazon, or shara brachas. When you daven and you say the blessing after the meals and other blessings, both these levels, A, are action, and B, thought and speech, are subdivisions of the category of the body of the mitzvahs. And then we have a kavanas ha-mitzvahs, the dafka b'yispareh, the sole devotion while we do a mitzvah is our ability to connect to Hashem. Yes, we're fulfilling the will of Hashem when we do whatever it is that we're doing, whether we're saying Shema, or whether we're learning Torah, or whether we're benching after a meal. But the soul of the mitzvah is our deep, passionate connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just like in a marriage, let's say. So the kavanas ha-mitzvah davka b'yisparech shehi kineshama leguf. The kavanah of the mitzvah, by performing the mitzvah with kavanah, this kavanah being like the soul for the body of the mitzvah. Nechlekes gam kein l'shtei madreges k'may shtei madreges haneshama shein baguf hachumri shehein chai u'medaber. So the kavanah is likewise divided into 2 levels, corresponding to the 2 levels of soul found in material bodies, namely A, in animals, and B, in man. We're going to continue this conversation tomorrow, but the takeaway is today is proper intent, which is the kavanah during the performance of the mitzvah, is equally Hashem's will. It's easy to say, oh, I just have to put on tefillin today and I have to run. But obviously it's important to stop and think, what am I doing? I'm fulfilling Hashem's will. And in this way, I'm connecting with Him in the deepest possible way. And you have to think about that. And when you think about that, that's how it happens in reality. So God wills the act, but God also wills the heart and the mind and the emotion and the connection within the act itself. Have a good day. Let's do many of those mitzvahs. And don't forget to have a lot of kavanah. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Zay gesund. See you tomorrow.